Today's video, the goal is to help you with the best teams to join as a cornerback in college football 25 Road to Glory. And we're going to be getting our stats from NCAA.com specifically, so if you want to track any of the sources that I mentioned in this video, you can do so there. But the criteria that we're going to be used is starting with this: teams that had a top 50 total offense. Look, this will let you know that if you get a stop, you get a turnover, you have guys on the other side of the ball, if you just so happen to not be a two-way player that can get the job done on that side of the ball, you hope. Second criteria will be teams with a returning top 50 quarterback. Now, we're specifically tracking passing yards with this. And the third criteria will be teams that finish top 50 in team sacks. Now, of course, a bonus is always having teams that haven't won a national championship in the modern era. So I'm not going to be going for your traditional Georgia, Ohio States, things of that nature. But now it's that time to go ahead and get into it. So if you're excited for this video, make sure to like, subscribe, turn on those notifications, and hey, let's get into our first team. Now, I hope this first team doesn't come as a surprise to you, but we're going to be looking at the Ole Miss Rebels. And with this team, you have a returning quarterback for the second year in a row in Jackson Dart, and the Ole Miss Rebels had a top 25 total offense according to NCAA.com. Ole Miss will have a favorable schedule surprisingly in the SEC West, with the first 4 games almost being guaranteed W's. Now, I did mention this in a previous video about their schedule, and it stands the test right now still. You're going to have Furman, Middle Tennessee, Wake Forest, and Georgia Southern. And yeah, going into the end of the schedule, you do need to win those games, but having that set up for you, you should be okay on the defensive side of the ball, getting those warm-ups out the way. Their defense finished with 35 sacks in a season, which should give you confidence that those boys will wreak havoc up front. And as far as the defensive back, that leaves you opportunities to get those wild passes that may go floating in the air whenever they are getting pressure up front. But getting into Ole Miss stats, total offense, they were ranked 13th. So obviously that lets you know points are going to be going up. The returning QB is Jackson Dart, and total sacks ranking is 19th. Now, there was a 4-way top for 19th, but outside of that, if they can crack the top 20, you know you can rely on them. Now, the next team we're talking about is the U, Miami. They're going to set themselves up for a prime year after having a top 25 defense in 2023. And the kicker with this, man, is Cameron Ward is transferring from Washington State over to Miami. And that'll create massive upside for this offense. Now, for those of you that aren't hip to who Cam Ward is, he literally is a top 5 QB in passing yards. He led Washington State to a top 5 passing offense last season. And we're talking about Washington State here. No disrespect to those guys out there, but with that though, he's just going to have such an impact that he'll come over to Miami and create some stability on that side of the ball. And they weren't even a bad team with Tyler Van Dyke at the quarterback position. But outside of that, man, my opinion, if you add your corner to that defense that they already have, which they got 34, 35 sacks last season as well, the U may easily be a top 10 team next season with all the impact players returning such as Xavier Restrepo and another year under the new regime at the coaching position. So look, let's just go ahead and get into the Miami stats, man. Their total offense was 31st. Now look, once again, this was with Tyler Van Dyke at the quarterback position, but you still had studs all around him and they were competitive in a lot of games. The returning QB is Cameron Ward. It's going to be a transfer, and you got a top 5 QB going into the ACC. Could really wreak some havoc out there. And total sacks rank tied for 19th. So look, these guys are going to be getting pressure on the ball, and who knows what you can do on the back end there for the defense. You can really help them out and bring some real noise out there in the ACC. Now, I hope a lot of you are excited for this team, but we're talking about the Oregon Ducks here. And this is a team without a national championship while also having arguably the best combination of uniforms in the college football modern era. And it's a great reason to choose Oregon. But along with that, they have a transfer quarterback from Oklahoma coming in while also having returning wide receivers to continue the explosive offense that they have. Those 2 reasons right there are enough to make that a decision for you, especially if you're trying to just go ahead and solidify Oregon as a power for the next couple of years. It will be Oregon's first season in the Big Ten as well, and their first 5 games seem to be favorable with Idaho, Boise State, Oregon State, UCLA, and Michigan State. So look, you should start the season off well. Dylan Gabriel should be able to handle business, and you shouldn't have to worry about too much. But let's go ahead and get into the stats here. Oregon's stats, their total offense was number 2 in the country. Obviously they had Bo Nix, but with Dylan Gabriel coming in and that coaching staff pretty much remaining the same, I don't think this is gonna fall too far, or it may raise to 1. I wouldn't be surprised there. The returning quarterback is Dylan Gabriel. We talked about that, and he was a top 10 passer last season. So look, you can't really sleep on him whatsoever. And the total sacks rank is 37. So look, you got guys that can really pressure the ball, but you're gonna be putting up points, and you on that back end dripped out in the outfit, getting picks and causing stops. Hey look, it's gonna be a good look up there. Next team we want to talk about is the Arizona Wildcats, man. And with this team, you have the 2023 Pac-12 Freshman Offensive Player of the Year in Noah Fafita, and he has serious arm talent, leading the Arizona Wildcats to a top 20 total offense and a 10-3 record while beating Oklahoma in the Valero Alamo Bowl. Now I did mention this in my wide receiver video, but it remains the same in this one. Arizona will be entering the Big 12 this season. You'll also have a stud linebacker in Justin Flo, who was a 5-star linebacker coming out of high school. When he transferred from Oregon, they still had him at a 4-star rank. So look, you got a freak at the middle linebacker position, pause. But now that sets up a lot of opportunity for you to go in and just literally cause a lot of problems for the Big 12. Now they do have an above average schedule going into the Big 12. And what I mean by that is it's gonna be fairly competitive. So if you can secure those first 5 wins in New Mexico, Northern Arizona, which is a really good FCS school, Kansas State, Utah, and Texas Tech, you should be good. Now, one thing to note about most of those teams outside of K-State is they're going to be passing teams. So they're going to challenge you down the field, and that'll give you more than enough opportunities to really show yourself in the first 5 games. Now, with Arizona stats, man, their total offense was number 20. And look, that's with a young QB, a young offense, and a young defense, and they still made something shake out here. Returning QB, Noah Fafita, we already talked about it. He's going to be set up for a big year this year, and total sacks rank 24. So you got some dogs up front that can really get to the ball. You on that back end just gonna be sitting pretty, hopefully, and just snagging the ball out the air and causing problems for receivers. Now this last team in this 5 is Appalachian State, man. And once again, we did mention this team before, but they finished 9-5 last season, and most of those losses were by 1 score or less. So literally 1 player on defense, 1 player on offense, whichever one you choose will have that much more of a difference, while also having a D-line front that can pressure the QB into some wild throws for opportunities. Appalachian State had a top 25 total offense, which lets you know that your offense will have your back when you get a stop or a turnover, but the downside is playing in the Sun Belt. So look, you won't have the best competition, but you will still have to go undefeated most likely, and you still may not even get invited to the college football playoff. But you put up enough numbers and you beat Clemson, that's going to be the big thing here, you're going to be okay. But let's get into the App State stats, man. Total offense, 22nd. Look, they're already set in the top 25 with their offense. The returning QB is Joey Aguilar, and with that, man, he's been consistent. He's a newcomer that really put up a lot of numbers last season, and I think he's gonna be okay going into this one again. And the total sacks rank 33rd. So look, you really got a solid team. You come in and literally get 1 stop for them per game, that literally may put you over the hump and make this team competitive all the way around in the Sun Belt. Now I like to get to this part of the video because these are my honorable mention teams that I like to go ahead and showcase to you guys. I think they're going to be good performers, but I'm just uncertain of how EA is going to represent them as far as the roster and their overalls. But the first team is Southern Methodist University out of Dallas. Now of course we know they're one of the newest members of the ACC, and they're coming off a high performing year with a top 20 total offense and was in top 5 for sacks as a team, which is insane, right? SMU finished 11-2 last season, beating a confident Tulane team, which I mentioned before in a previous video, but SMU also has an extremely talented QB returning after breaking his foot in the final game of the regular season. He'll be a young stud that gives you a chance to spoil the party for a lot of teams in the ACC. Now, when we get into the SMU stats, their total offense, 16th in the country, man. You can't get any better than that, especially for a team going into the ACC, and you got a returning quarterback in Preston Stone. He literally has a big arm, 6'1", I think he's like 210, 215. Dude is going to be slinging the ball all over the field, and total sacks ranked, they were 3rd in the country. So you got some horses up front that are really gonna hunt the quarterback, easy picks for you, or a lot of coverage sacks by your defensive back team. So really, you're gonna be set all the way around, and they don't commit a lot of penalties on this team. That's another key factor there. And the last team I want to mention in this video is the Tennessee Volunteers, man. You see, I've been up on this team, but the reason is because they're pulling in a lot of recruits, along with having a 5-star QB at the helm with Nico Iamaleava, which we know will perform well in College Football 25 because EA has mentioned that 5 stars will move completely different than a lot of the other roster members. Something to note though is that Tennessee had a top 20 total offense and cracked the top 10 in total sacks, which puts them in position to compete against some of the best in the SEC. Now look, that's the one kicker with this team, that you're going to be in a competitive SEC, and I'm talking about highly competitive schedule. Each time you play, you know your squad won't slouch, but also you'll be going against some of the best competition week after week. Let's go ahead and get into the stats of Tennessee, man. Total offense was ranked 19th. The returning QB is Nico Iamaleava, which he did play in the final game of the regular season in 2023, so he is specifically returning, and the total sacks rank is 8th. I'm hoping that EA does give him respect, but doesn't necessarily have the reps at the position, so I don't imagine him having a trait like headstrong when he goes into play Georgia or Bama or things of that nature. But outside of that, let me know what you think of the teams that I've given you today. I hope this helps you in the slightest when it comes to trying to pick a team for College Football 25 Road to Glory. I think this is a really good list personally, and these are teams that can really just shake up the landscape. When you're going against really good teams, it'll appear as an upset, but you really have a really good team on your side when you're going into these games. I'm hoping they add two-way players in College Football 25. We will see going forward, and if we do, we'll add a video for that. But outside of that, my people, I truly appreciate you guys, and hey, I'll see you in the next one.